Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome all viewers. Inshallah, in today's video, I wanted to discuss a concern that some people in the comments have shown, which is it really permissible for us to discuss the charges that have been brought against Wisam Sharieff? Is this backbiting? Is this slander to discuss this? He hasn't been found guilty in a court of law yet, so is this something that we can talk about? For those sincerely concerned about this, who want to seek knowledge of Islam, this is a very praiseworthy thing. So, inshallah, I will be addressing this concern. So, point number one, in Islam, we should always remember that there is a foundational principle where we always weigh the pros and the cons, the maslahah and the mafsada. When it comes to a specific situation, that's what we're going to do. A very easy to remember example of this is when it comes to eating pork. Everyone knows that eating pork is haram. However, if somebody is on the verge of starving to death and the only thing available to them to eat is pork, then you weigh the pros and the cons. Which is worse, eating pork to stay alive or not eating pork and dying? When we weigh the pros and the cons of this situation, we find that eating pork and staying alive is better than not eating pork and dying. So remember this principle when it comes to the situation with Wisam Sharieff. After we analyze this entire scenario, the entire situation, we look into it, we investigate. After gathering all the data and analyzing the situation, is it better to talk about or is it worse to talk about? Well, before making a decision, let's look at some of the information, which leads to point number two. Allah tells us in the Quran, "O you who believe, if a fasiq, if a liar, if an evil person comes to you with any news, verify it, lest you should harm people in ignorance and afterwards you become regretful for what you've done." Now, when we read and understand this ayah, Allah is telling us that when a fasiq comes to you with any news, do we just disbelieve it? Do we go against it? Do we assume that it's false? Do we automatically believe it and start proclaiming that it's true? No, Allah says, verify it. When such news comes to us, we should investigate. Now, when it comes to the situation of Wisam Sharieff, it's not just hearsay. It's not just gossip. It's not just random people saying this or that without any sort of evidence. But rather, firstly, I came to be aware of this whole situation because the institute that he worked for, Al-Maghrib, made a tweet that went viral. November 1st, they posted, "Al-Maghrib Institute was notified today of a serious violation of Al-Maghrib Institute policy by Wisam Sharieff, who teaches our Quran Revolution program. After a thorough review, it was determined that actions in violation of Al-Maghrib's code of conduct and established policies occurred, after which Wisam Sharieff's employment contract was terminated. The religion of Allah is not reliant on any one individual, and the Quran Revolution program will continue with our students as scheduled." So for this well-known Muslim institution to make such a tweet, let me know that something serious must have happened. Upon further investigation, you find the actual affidavit. The affidavit says that an individual identifying herself as Wisam Sharieff's wife telephoned the Alabama Department of Human Resources to report what she saw. And then, of course, you have the details of what this FBI agent swears is true according to his investigation, which led to Wisam Sharieff's arrest and him facing these criminal charges. The affidavit even claims that there is video evidence. Now, of course, following this, you then find Al-Maghrib, as well as many prominent Muslim clerics, Wisam's former colleagues and promoters, former students, all types of different people within the Muslim community are talking about this. There are news articles being published across the nation and around the world about what happened. Even some of the people who I've seen saying that people shouldn't talk about it are talking about it. That's exactly what they're doing. Some of them are even saying that, well, one should alert the authorities and let them do their job. They did. The authorities did investigate, and they are charging him with these crimes. And that being said, throughout my video, I've always said that these are allegations and these are charges. It's incorrect to act as if he was already found guilty in a court of law because that hasn't happened, not yet at least. However, there's also an argument to be made that saying that these are just mere allegations undermines the reality of the evidence. These are federal charges. This isn't mere hearsay. So when people, for example, they compare this situation to what happened with Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, mother of the believers. There are people who slandered her. And just to paraphrase, there was a situation where she was essentially lost in the desert. So there was a traveler who saw her stranded and gave her a ride home to safety. And that's all that happened. But during that time, there were individuals who started slandering her. making all sorts of false accusations against her, even though what I just mentioned is all that happened. There was no evidence of any wrongdoing. Now, that situation is not comparable to Wisam Sharieff's. To give you an example of what would be much closer to it being comparable is if Wisam Sharieff gave a woman and her daughter a ride home, and people saw him drop them off at their house, and he drove off, and then they started making all of these accusations against him. And then upon further investigation, there was nothing there. Then maybe such a comparison would be valid. But this is a very different situation. So with that said, I just want to close by saying Islam is a balanced religion. There are some people in the comments who are going to the extreme of saying, he's innocent, he didn't do anything, this is a setup. That is one extreme of people speaking without knowledge. But then there's another extreme of people who are acting like they saw everything happen right before their very eyes. They know exactly what he's guilty of, whereas the truth is balanced. We should discuss these things with wisdom. We should try to derive benefit to protect ourselves, our women, our children, weigh the pros and the cons, and present the information as it is. May Allah guide all of us. May Allah forgive us for our shortcomings. May Allah bring forth the truth and justice in this case. Allah knows best. JazakumAllahukhairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.